scratch, wampum, dough, sugar, clams, loot, bills, bones, bread, bucks, money. Money is, at its essence, that measure.
Welcome to the Ozark podcast, presented by the Joe Blow Football Show. You need to right now like and subscribe and continue listening. You can find all of our content at joeblowfootballshow.com and Ozark Podcast. I'm Jamie G. Esquire the Fifth. No, I am not taking any more clients, so I cannot defend you in a court of law. He is Magnum Mills, and we're about to break down the 5th episode of season 4 of Ozark, Ellie, right here on the Ozark Podcast. Magnum Mills.
Jamie G, thank you very much. Sometimes he does get confused about the legal ability to take clients versus choosing not to take clients. Remember, everyone has a choice. We're here today to do season 4, episode 5 of Ozark, Ellie. It was released January 21st, 2022, along with the rest of season 4, part 1 on Netflix. This was again directed by Alec Sakharov. It's the 6th episode of Ozark overall that he has directed, the 2nd of the season following the previous episode, Ace Deuce. Episode was written by Paul Colesby and is guest starring Joseph Sikora as Frank Cosgrove Jr., Katarina Lenk as Clara Shaw, Cece Castillo as Sheriff Guerrero, and Kevin L. Johnson as our boy Sam Dermody. And the plot summary is: the senator extends an olive branch with a twist. Ruth and Marty scramble to rebuy drugs that Darlene sold. Charlotte ponders life after high school. Jamie G, let us know what the symbols were for this episode and also any other notable callbacks, appearances, or whatnot.
The title card symbols for this episode are interesting. I mean, I feel like you could spend 4 years getting a psych degree trying to break down what these things mean, and I absolutely love it. This week's symbols were 2 video game controllers, a pulse diagram, a honey bottle in the shape of a bear, and documents in a file. Now, Magnum Mills, when I hold up these signs, what do they mean to you? No, I mean, all seriousness, this is very cool. This is becoming a thing that they do that's a subtle thing, but it grabs our attention. We really like it. And I think we're going to start breaking down what they mean to us. We also saw ourselves finally get a little backstory for PI, private investigator Mel Saddam. This is one that we've been dying to get here, just like what is going on with this guy. We do learn that he's a former police detective and a damn good one at that. But unfortunately, homie hit the ski slopes. That's right. He had a history of substance abuse and got into the evidence container. Maybe once or twice. Ruth once again manages to make a deal under less than ideal circumstances. I mean, this woman, she's more clutch than Patrick Ewing sweating in the 4th with 2 minutes left. Like, she is, when the game's on the line, dude, put the ball in Ruth's hands. Like, that's all I can say. Jonah reveals to Darlene that he saw his parents disposing of Sheriff Nix's body. Wendy has made some tough decisions, so it's somewhat surprising that she still makes a choice to call 911 for Darlene. We said last week, we think we might start to see Wendy make a horrible decision every single week and just continuing to devalue the once moral compass that we thought she had. Very, very crazy development with Wendy. And I'll tell you, Magnum Mills, the Jonah situation, this was important, right? Because Darlene kind of got him up, she had his back up against the wall here a little bit. She was starting to bully his ass, and it was a little bit scary, basically saying, whose side are you on? I want loyalty. And he straight up looked her in the eye and told her the truth about Sheriff Nix. And this is another important development here with Jonah. I mean, he's a real wild card. Is everyone you're kind of seeing one way or the other? Maybe it goes this way, maybe it goes that. Right now, it doesn't look like there's any chance of Jonah doing anything except hating his mother and working against his family. So really interesting there. Magnum Mills, what were your thoughts on this one, and what were some of your likes, man? Let's break it down for him.
That builds into my likes a little bit, because what Jonah doesn't really realize is that by betraying his family, Darlene will never trust him, because Darlene would never really trust anyone who betrayed their family. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there. Because we know that's how Darlene is. Like, that's absolutely what she would say if it came down to it. Jonah would be like, well, I did what you said. Like, I can't trust you. You turned on your own family. How could I trust you? That's exactly what fucking Darlene would say. So I feel this is Darlene might be maybe not the best character, but the most fully realized character. Like, Darlene, we know who she is. She's a fucking shark, and it's generally a lot of fun. So yeah, like Darlene, I also liked here the opening flashback where we saw, Mel sat on the phone with his sponsor, I'm assuming about AA, as he sneaks into the evidence room to steal some I don't know, coke, something or whatever. Like you said, he was doing something up his nose and then flips the lights on and there's a guard in there. Like, what was that guard doing sitting in the dark or whatever? I have some questions there. But it was finally like, all right, here's a little bit of backstory. We get an idea. Again, proved it's supposed to be a cool character. Makes sense. The dude's hyper competent, just has some extracurricular activity. So we might talk about how I feel about the flashback scenes overall, but I like that they finally started fleshing out the Millsap character.
I do too, but Magnum Mills, is it just me or does it feel like there's got to be something a little bit more here? I don't think that's it with Mel. We're getting a little bit of background, but we still don't know if he's actually there on behalf of Helen's ex-husband or what exactly he's doing. Was he hot on the trail of Navarro? Like, we have no idea what he is or what he's doing there, but I did enjoy this little nugget. But something tells me this guy's going to go on this entire season or damn near close to it, right? I mean, not just the front seven. I think I'm starting to think he's going to bleed into the back seven if they're really going to use him the right way, right?
Yeah, again, just to be clear here, we've seen all 7 episodes of season 4. We will be spoiling everything up to and through this episode here, episode 5. Nothing past this, but yeah, he is listed in the main cast. So you have to expect he's at least going to play either a bigger role here at the end of part 1, or maybe even a bigger role in part 2, maybe a little column A, little bit of column B. And, one thing that I kind of liked here is we saw, I never thought we'd see another scene with Frank Jr. and Darlene. We did. And sure as shit, man, when he sees Darlene coming around the corner, he instinctively goes to cover up his crotch and move. It just made me laugh. And then Darlene apologizing, and I believe the line was something like, "Well, I wanted to make it right, but I went to the store and they didn't have a card that said I'm sorry for shooting off your dick." And no, Darlene, they don't have that card. That was that whole exchange. Something that might be interesting is it's a little bit, I think, of a character change for Frank Jr. has now had to kind of reevaluate. He's really cocky and everything before. And I mean, it's kind of, maybe a little bit of a trope that dude has a dick problem and all of a sudden he's really re-examining his life goals or something like that. But it does seem that now all of a sudden, no way would the Frank Jr. we met in season 3 have ever done a deal with a lady who pointed a gun at him, much less shot his dick off, and now here he's obviously considering it. So I like this development with Frank Jr., and I thought the whole exchange here was really funny.
Yeah, and I think that's a good as we start to get through some of the funny things, let's move on to some of the darker things here, right? I mean, man, I got to go to Wendy, right? I mean, and I mentioned it last episode. I'm sorry, but to me, she has taken over as the lead role. She just has taken over as the read, and she crushes it, but in her own horrible way. I mean, she is just, the grin on her face as she calls the 911 for Darlene, and just her sense of power over the situation and power over an adversary in Darlene was, I'm not going to lie, I liked it, but it is dark and it is damn, dude, she is on another level of cutthroatian. I mean, she is straight up whew, you don't want to cross her path, man. She is bad. As Darlene puts, she is a goddamn curse. I mean, she really is. I mean, but she crushes here, and I think she's become the lead of the show.
I can't really argue. I think for a long time they've been moving to kind of a 3 co-lead situation where it's really Marty, Ruth, and Wendy are all more or less kind of equally sharing the mantle as who I would classify as the lead here. But I think Wendy has kind of had, I don't know, maybe she has the widest range of, she's the political thing, she's dealing with Navarro, she's dealing with the kids, whereas Ruth and Marty are maybe a little bit more kind of local or contained within their own plot lines. I do like the Wendy of it all. I think that when she meets with the sheriff, this is her going all in on the Ben thing. She turns on the waterworks when she reports him as missing. I think it just proved, she really is that manipulative, and I'm not sure that there's what line won't she cross at this point, kind of. And it's a little bit scary because I think it's weird because, again, it's kind of juxtaposed with the end of the episode where, based on everything that happened, you would think Wendy's not going to call 911, but she does then. And that's kind of, I really thought that the whole point of the whole episode was to establish why she wouldn't, and then she did. I think it's an interesting choice. I'm not mad at it. it was just, again, the show continues to surprise me with Wendy, and I do enjoy that.
What I think here is we're going to a deeper level of manipulation and control. And that's really what I think Wendy wants. And her having Darlene with this weakness and dangling her saving of her life over her head, psychologically here, it gives Wendy an advantage. And that leads me to my next point. This show is doing a pretty good job exposing the dirty world and harshness of what is the United States political environment. I mean, this arena is as cutthroat and terrible as it's a very, very harsh reality. And Wendy is so elite at it. I mean, she is great, but damn, is she not hardened? I mean, she went from working for President Obama's campaign to helping the suppression of voting with this voting machine scam with the senator on the Republican side of the aisle. So this is huge. Like, she's gone full blown, 180 here in terms of starting out in politics of wanting to make the world a better place to now I think it's doing a good job exposing this. It's not full blown House of Cards or anything, but I like what they've done here.
I think that we've both agreed that political Wendy is generally our favorite Wendy. In the show has actually done a really good job writing these plot lines. It's, the kids, the heroin thing, the cartel thing, the FBI, I think those are all underserved. I think they've done an excellent job in the political arena. I even like the center character Schaefer here, the lawyer guy, our fixer dude Jim now. He's solid. I enjoy him as a character. So I would just assume they did more of this. I wish they had almost not siloed Wendy out of the cartel shit, but almost just kept that running with Marty and then let Wendy just do more of this political shit, because I enjoy that, quite a bit with her. And just to round out Wendy, the one thing I did like, it was before Darlene had the heart attack, but when they're in their driveway and they're just basically trading, they're basically shooting at each other without guns verbally and just throwing shade at each other. And her voice is dripping with sarcasm, and you can see Darlene she's shooting daggers with her eyes. And I think that whole scene is amazing, and it does kind of pay off when you kind of see her do the thing, and you can almost believe that it did stress her out enough to have a heart attack. So I really just thought it was both tense and funny at the same time, which is something this show can do now, which is something that I think only the best shows can do, is kind of build that tension and get that kind of nervous excitement, laughter. Like, you're enjoying it, but you're still like, oh my God, what's going to happen here? And when it was happening, Jamie G, just let me ask you honestly, did you want her to call 911 or not? I didn't.
I didn't either. And I thought it would be almost more soothing of more of a spiritual death in a way for Darlene. I mean, Darlene's a pretty horrible person. She deserves a pretty harsh death. I think it's kind of like, spoiler alert right now, if you have not watched Game of Thrones, turn this episode off. But it's kind of like, actually, I won't spoil it, but we all wanted Cersei to die a brutal death, right? And so it's the same thing here with Darlene. Now, not to the same degree, but of all things, it would be a harmonious way for Darlene to go out as Wendy just grins at her and stares as she just dies in her driveway from cardiac arrest, right? Being so pissed off because of Wendy got her so worked up that Ruth is back working. I mean, it would just be poetic, but I do like that they're keeping Darlene around. And again, this war is not over yet. And that is the war between the Birds and Darlene Snell. Magnum Mills, let's talk about our other big two characters here. And, we haven't touched on Marty in a little bit. I thought one of the greatest moments in the show was when, Claire says to Marty, you seem to know an awful lot of heroin dealers for a philanthropist. And Marty just responds, just casual, just the three.
That was my line of the episode. That was I don't know if you stole it because you saw my notes or not, but that was my line of the episode. And Bateman is so good at that deadpan delivery, just because he, like, again, something you would see Michael Bluth doing when they're kind of like when Sitwell's being like, oh yeah, you lost your family, treason or whatever, and he's like, yeah, just the one treason, it's fine, just the one treason,
just the one. Yeah, I mean, I got my own felony to commit. I mean, they're really starting to utilize this with Marty, and I really like it. And honestly, his character needed it. And
yeah, they've kind of jaded him, and same kind of thing. Like when they're waiting for, that's one thing I did like. Again, we talked about Ruth getting the deal. I liked how she got her $100K out this time. Yeah, it was like, when you do a deal with someone on Monopoly, you make the deal and you're like, oh yeah, we have a deal, but also next time you pass go, I'm gonna need you $200. Ruth kind of like, yeah, Marty, I'll help you out for $100,000. Marty just like, yep, gives, and she gets her own thing. And right when it's happening, you're getting the tension because the pharmacy guy is going to go in there. Like, and the pharmacy bitch gives him the go ahead to go like murk people, to steal heroin, to make legal drugs. I mean, this is not my favorite plot line, but then we see, you know, Marty's going to try to stop him. He just clocks Marty, whatever. Ruth comes, you know, again, we said Ruth gets the deal done, loved it. Then Marty comes home later, and Wendy's like, what the fuck happened? Marty's like, oh yeah, like, dude clocked me in the head and shit. Like, he's getting beat up and hit so often, it doesn't even register anymore. He's like, oh yeah, I forgot, like, dude clocked me in the fucking head and like probably gave me a concussion a couple hours ago. Yeah, it happens all the time now.
That's how stressful. Imagine your life being that stressful, where like getting punched in the face with a gun like is the least thing you remember. Like, that's not even on your mind anymore, dude. Like, you've moved on to other problems. Like, that's really saying something.
Yeah, I like
that,
where they're going with Marty overall. I like that they're kind of making him maybe a little bit more jaded. Like the idea that he's trying to like just take what he can with Jonah, whereas Wendy's trying to control the whole situation. Marty's just like, let's try to keep him in our house. Like, if he's going to commit felonies, let's let him do it where we can watch him commit felonies or try to protect him or whatever. He's being kind of more pragmatic or whatever. And I think they do kind of try to show that sometimes, whereas, you know, earlier Marty maybe had bigger hopes and dream, or didn't kind of think on like all like that level, like that kind of micro level.
and again, I think this is setting up an important dynamic here between, there's always been a rift between Marty and Wendy. I mean, shit, the show opens up with Marty watching Wendy banging some other dude cheating on him, right? I mean, with the do-it-yourself porn and whatnot. But, you know, the thing here is this, at times they've come together through crisis. I'll say that. I like the idea that they're still dangling it out there in the universe. The show is, hey, there's a chance, you know, Wendy could kill Marty, or Marty could kill Wendy if it came down to it. Like, I like that that's still an option on the table. And every time they do one of these little riffs, one of these little disagreements, Wendy goes out on an island, whatever it is, with a parental decision, I like it because it creates just enough tension for me to make sure that, yeah, they might not be together at the end here. Like that, like, I like having that as an option, Magnum Mills.
And that seems like natural conflict. Two parents not agreeing on how to raise their kids. That doesn't seem like manufactured conflict. That seems like real, honest to God conflict, which is something, you know, that I would like. And, you know, we have what you liked. I think we agreed for the most part on this. I guess we could transition a bit here, unless you have anything else, into maybe the things that we didn't like as much about this episode.
When we look at dislikes, you know, right off the bat, Magnum Mills, this was it felt like a slower episode for me. And, you know, I get it. There's some kind of, you know, chess piece here moving around to try to land some stuff probably in the next episode or two before this front seven come to a conclusion, but it just moved slow for me. And it was really all centered around the heroin deal with Frank Jr. and Ruth. And don't get me wrong, that was cool, but this one just didn't move as quick, not as edge of the seat type thing for me. What was your general, I mean, am I in left field here, or did you kind of feel the same way?
I would say that right off the top, that the whole heroin thing, ever since Darlene they decided to replant the poppies or whatever, just the whole thing hasn't worked for me. It seems to exist basically to create conflict, to keep the cartel with like somebody else other than the Birds, keep a third party involved in that faction, maybe in a fourth party with the FBI. It's never seemed terribly realistic. That, I mean, like, shouldn't they be a cartel? Like, why were they? The Snells should have way more money than they do if it's really as good as I think. That whole plot line has just never made a ton of sense with me, and it kind of highlights sometimes how out of step this show can seem with what I think might be kind of realistically feasible. And at the beginning, I think we were kind of hoping for kind of like how Breaking Bad started out, and it was still kind of fair, rooted in science at the end. They took a few liberties. Here, you don't want to, you kind of are starting to get a little bit of magic computer stuff or whatever. I liked at the beginning more when you had to acquire these businesses and do these different things to establish how you would probably, a real person would go about laundering money.
Absolutely. And one of the other things the show's been pretty bad about is flashbacks, right? Like, they don't really change, typically when I see a flashback, I want it to go blue tint. I want it to go black and white. I want it to be noticeable for me from the viewer to say, okay, I'm in a flashback here, Mills. I think they've really struggled with this. And on top of struggling, telling us how much time's gone by and what's what, it's like we got to pick up clues, and maybe that's intentional. I mean, how do you feel about their flashbacks?
Pretty much the same way. Like, I don't even mind if you kind of casino it. You just go years ago back home. It doesn't have to just let you know that you're entering a flashback. You can do that by either changing the way it's shot, by giving some sort of on-screen prompt, or making the characters look different. they just don't do any of the three. They just kind of throw you in and trust you to feel like you can figure out, like all of a sudden you see Bruce, like, all right, I guess it's a flashback, but nowadays it's one of those things. If you turn your head for a second or whatever, you're all of a sudden like, why is Marty talking to Bruce? It might not make sense for you. I just think it would make a little more sense to go out of the way to differentiate these things, or at least let the viewer know, all right, this is taking place in a different time period.
One thing for me, Magnum Mills, that bothers me almost every episode, but it really showed up in this episode. I just think the show has really struck out here. I mean, massive swing and a miss on the Kansas City mob. I'm sorry. No mob boss in the history of any organized crime outfit will let someone owe them $500K. They're not just going to let you owe them $500K and take their rehab business. Like, and oh, by the way, you owe me $500K and you shot my only son's dick off. Like, I think they really missed this here, man. And I don't understand why they didn't dedicate enough time to it. And it's just so unbelievable to me. Like, the Kansas City mob is a real travesty, in my opinion, when it comes to Ozark. It's one of the things I think they messed up most.
I think maybe the best way to have gone with that would have been if you could have kept Buddy around and let him and Frank Sr. go together. I think they only had like the one scene, but they had some really good chemistry. And I think adding kind of that older generational thing might have worked. I like what they're doing with Frank Jr. here, but you're right. It seems, my guess is they have a role in mind in the end game of the series for the KC Mafia, so they have to keep them around, but they really didn't have anything to do with them other than just kind of keep them in play. So they've just kind of been keeping them in play, which has required them to basically be whatever the plot needs them to be. And yeah, you're right. Like the Frank Sr., he was always this guy, but then like Buddy talks him down and then he's tough again. But now like he's dumb enough to go up into Darlene's joint with no fucking bodyguard. Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah.
No mob boss would have gone up in there with no fucking bodyguard. No fucking way.
Yeah, no
fucking way. And then he lets Darlene get the drop on him when she goes in the other room. Like, you're telling me he didn't have a piece or he didn't bother? Like, no, just no. That doesn't make any sense. I agree.
Nope. There. Yep. So very, very frustrating for me with that. Speaking of not frustrating, but slightly, maybe I missed something, and maybe you're smarter or somebody out there in the world watching Ozark smarter, but like Darlene hanging the missing posters, like I thought this was cool and everything, but like, was it supposed to be was there a punchline there, or was it just like, hey, just purely gamesmanship to mess with Wendy here? I mean, was there something bigger? Was this supposed to alert national attention to Ben, which could then pin the disappearance and ultimate murder back on Wendy and Marty? Like, or is this just a psychological strategy with Darlene to get one up on Wendy? I mean, I don't know.
I think that I did kind of correct. It took me a minute. And the only way I kind of got there is because I couldn't figure that out, but I also couldn't figure out why when Wendy is talking to Darlene on the phone or whatever, and she says like, oh, and I reported Ben missing, and you see Darlene get all upset, and I'm like, how is that like going to get Darlene in trouble? I didn't really, and I think it is they're just literally playing this game with each other. What Wendy did basically nullified the wanted posters, which she was just doing just to fuck with Wendy, I'm pretty sure is what it was. And I think they could have done a better job articulating that, but there's really no other, the body's gone. I mean, it's gonna go, but even that, the ashes, I don't even know if you can DNA test ashes like that. So I just think it's just them fucking with each other, which is piled on top of, I think, to meant to build the tension to them being able to throw that shade at each other and everything like that.
Yeah, and while we're on the same vein here, like, why in the hell was Darlene like sketched out and worried when Wendy told her that she had reported Ben missing? Why was that a leg up for Wendy? Like, what does that do to Darlene? Like,
I think it just meant that Darlene knows that she got outmaneuvered because now the missing posters don't matter. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I guess it's just
it's I don't think it's good writing, which is why it falls into the dislike for me. In the fact that I had to think about it that long to try to even come up with this kind of rudimentary explanation doesn't speak well for it. I don't think it added much. I think what they really wanted was that visual of her driving and looking out of the car and seeing the wall of the missing posters. I think they wanted that visual and they just didn't know how to get to it.
And you know what, maybe that makes sense. And that's where I was like, okay, is this going to be a bigger thing where now, because you got to think about it, he's missing, but like, it's not
when they bring in the pops or whatever, you think maybe like you get a big like a search going or something, and they start
like there's no
like
search, no one's looking for him, like he's not like I don't know, like there's no outrage about it other than by Ruth. So it just in Jonah. So I don't know. It just seems
or maybe
like,
it makes the FBI ask like Marty and Wendy,
exactly.
like, where's Ben?
Right.
When they're trying to make a deal, they're like, yeah, well, let's talk to Ben. He seems to be involved in this.
Yep. That would be where that would start to matter. But to me, I guess it was just, I don't know. They could have did more there. Magnum Mills, what were some other things that showed up for you on the dislike column here in episode 5?
I mean, overall, I think I've said this already, but the whole like heroin pharmaceutical plot line, it seems like really far-fetched. It just seems to exist to keep the cartel in conflict with somebody else on like defeated the Lagunas of the other cartel or whatever. So just that whole plot line. I've never really been a fan of the Snell's heroin plot line, and now it's just like that on literal steroids. So, if the show would just wash its hands and kind of like, just nip this whole thing off, I would be pretty cool with that.
We will find out. Man, let's put a grade on this one. I'll start us off, Magnum Mills. Here we are on the Ozark podcast. I'm Jamie G from the Joe Blow Football Show. He's Magnum Mills. We're breaking down episode 5 of season 4 of Ozark right here on the Ozark podcast. That's right. And we're going to grade this baby. So if you're just tuning in now and you want to reverse engineer this episode, we're going to start you off with the grade and then our dislikes and then ultimately our likes, backward style, baby. But for me, man, this was probably my least favorite episode of the season. We'll have to go back and see how I graded episode 2 and 3. But for me, I'm giving this one like a 69. And I think that's a little generous. It was just way too slow for me. And there's just too much building here. And there's just things that, the dislikes almost equaled the likes for me in this one. So I just, not my favorite episode.
Yeah, I mean, is it 69 or 69, dude? Because those might be two different grades, depending on how clean your cache is. And this is definitely not anywhere near 100% clean, but I don't think it failed either. For me, this was, again, a pretty slow episode, but it ended on such a strong note that I'm going to bump it up into kind of that like weak C range, I would say. Call it like I want to say 71 to 73. So that means probably a 72. You're passing. It's a little bit better than D for diploma, but still not really a hard C there. I consider that hard C probably like a 75. So like, a strong C minus, a soft C. Good episode overall, but it's more of a piece moving episode where I think they're trying to get all the characters in position to really, kind of bang it out for these last 2 episodes of part 1 based on the ending we got. I think that's what they're going to do. So that, that probably bumps it up at least, half a point or so for me.
Fair point. I mean, the ending was good. And I think, again, hopefully it sets the stage for a really strong episode 6 and episode 7 as this first half of the final season of Ozark wraps up. Magnum Mills, we're excited to break it down right here on the Ozark podcast. Again, I am Jamie G. Esquire the 5th. He is Magnum Mills, the mathematician. We are from the Joe Blow Football Show. And this has been the Ozark podcast. Magnum Mills, where can they find more podcasts and all the things that we do for free for the people?
Hopefully.
People's champ.
Champ is here. Hopefully you're already subscribed to this podcast. If you're not, please now follow, subscribe, whatever podcast app you're using. You can find us on all of your favorite podcast streaming platforms simply by searching for Ozark Podcast. You can send us feedback at ozarkpodcast@gmail.com. We're on social media at Ozark Podcast, Twitter, Instagram, all the good ones. We're from the Joe Blow Football Show. Find all our stuff there at joeblowfootballshow.com. And the Joe Blow Football Show is also on all the good ones on social media at Joe Blow Show. I'm Magnum Mills. That's Jamie G. We're here. We're going to be right back if you just stay tuned to do episode 6 of season 4 of Ozark from Netflix. And if you got money, that's good, but it's not good money until it's clean.
This has been the Ozark podcast presented by the Joe Blow Football Show. We are not in any way, shape, or form affiliated with Ozark, MRC, Aggregate Films, or Netflix. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Any views or opinions expressed here are personal and do not represent those of people, institutions, or organizations who may or may not be associated with the Joe Blow Football Show. If you have any questions, please contact us at ozarkpodcast@gmail.com. That's ozarkpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. Please remember to like, subscribe, and comment.
I'm so fucking focused.